Nancy Green with Film Critique. And one of my questions is, with all the history that's involved with the show, I wanted to know, how do you coordinate to keep everything together? You kind of touched upon that already. And I was wondering if you could go a bit more in depth in that. And if you've ever made any mistakes, like having like maybe a song that, or that didn't fit the scene, or maybe costumes that were outside of the time period or anything like that. And how did you guys like cover it?
Well, go ahead, Tank.
I was just gonna say we never make mistakes in music. No, honestly though, I mean, me and Heather will watch a scene so many times before we even get to the mix stage that by the time we get there, everything's been solved and we know exactly where we are. So by the time we get to the last hurdle, we've gone back and forth so many times. We're pretty clear on, and we feel great about where we're going. Would you agree, Heather?
Yeah, absolutely. And so Tank and I have a great relationship, and Keia is amazing too. She does so much research. You want to talk about just your process with Meech too, and
yeah, sure.
comes in for
So it's important to us to get the research down so that we don't make those mistakes. Sometimes because we're working with different areas like Detroit, New York, St. Louis, people wear different things at different times. So, you know, sometimes the audience that sees it in New York might be like, oh, they were doing that in Detroit before we were, if they don't know the history. So, you know, we do a deep dive into the research, and then I get the opportunity to talk to Meech, Big Meech, every once in a while through Little Meech, or Little Meech will download some things from Big Meech to me, and, you know, then I get to talk to Terry every once in a while as well. So we do our best to try to make it as authentic as possible.
My question is about the relationship as a whole. We see at the end of season 3, of course, they get divorced and everything like that. So I wanted to know if you could kind of talk a bit about what that means in terms of parenting for them in season 4, and just what it says about Black relationships and kind of keeping the family unit together, even though they're kind of doing their own things as well.
For me personally, that's the one thing that I really do love about the show, that, you know, despite our differences and stuff, I think even when we get mad at each other, at the end of the day, I know that he's a good father. And I care deeply about him. And we want to do what's best for our kids. So we do always come together on that. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about the show.
Yeah, I mean, I see that we're Charles and Lucille, that every relationship, when it's strained, it has a breaking point, you know. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, what we saw in season 3, and I, you know, I'm curious. I'd always be curious, you know, if there was, whether if there wasn't infidelity, how much longer would they have stayed together? Because I just feel like their relationship was strained. It had a breaking point through the finances, just through everything, and each other sort of feeling with themselves not being seen. You know what I mean? And I think that for Charles, or from my perspective, that he sort of checked out for a time as far as being a parent. And I think that what begins to happen with what happens with Nicole, I think that's the thing that kind of brings him back. I think that he was fathering sort of from a distance for a while, and then when she gets, you know, picked up by the police or whatever, what have you, that kind of brings him back and says to him, "My job is not done," you know. And I think everybody, every parent, every individual, sometimes we do stray off and we lose focus, and we need that shock to the system that kind of brings us back to reality and says, like, you have to be here, you have to be present. Well, I think that was his sort of moment.